This is the Education Business Podcast for all founders and business owners in the education sector. This podcast is for you if you have an education business or you're thinking about starting one. That could be tutoring, publishing, holiday clubs. It really doesn't matter. You're in business and you're also in education. But most of all, you're focused on improving outcomes for children in the way you know best, through your business. I'm Claire Riley, co-founder of educational resources website Classroom Secrets, and I'll be sharing how to make your education business bigger, better, and have more impact through my own experiences and also the conversations I have with other founders and business owners in education. The Education Business Podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets, helping you to support your children's learning. I've been to a lot of business mastermind sessions, and they've all had positives and negatives about them. It tends to be one of two things. It's either that it's a massive mastermind with lots and lots of people in the same room, and actually it's only the speaker at the front who's really answering the questions, which I found frustrating as being somebody in those rooms with a lot more knowledge and experience to share, because at the end of the day, you want to help people. Or it can be the other scenario where maybe there's 6 to 10 of you and there's a set structure to follow. And I was part of a mastermind in London, and I really enjoyed going and I loved meeting the people, but I didn't think the structure was set up that well. And one of the reasons why is because you basically have 20 minutes to talk about your problem and get questions and feedback. And so I would follow the rules, being the only woman in the room as well. And I would very carefully say as little as I possibly could, because they were the instructions given to me. But then all of the advice I would get would be irrelevant because of all the context that I wasn't allowed to give. And then I went to another business networking, and they had a really nice way of doing a mastermind. And what I did is I took that and I created from that a mastermind structure that we would use at Classroom Secrets on away days. I do want to credit where I got the idea for this mastermind from. So it's actually from Your Affordable Board. So if you're in the north, it is quite a new business networking group that you might be interested in joining. It's YAB for short, but it's Your Affordable Board. So here's how we run a mastermind session. And I think this is helpful because maybe you've got a group of friends and you can use this for coming up with ideas. Maybe you've got a team and you might want to use it with a team. So at Classroom Secrets, we do it like this. It's an hour session. The first 5 minutes, somebody delivers a problem. So if you were doing it in an entrepreneurial setting, it would be an entrepreneur coming and saying, I don't know how to make sales in the next month, or something like that. And then they would talk about the problem as well, and they would give details on the problem. When it's in the company, we decide a problem that we want to present, and we choose a person who can present that. So something that we looked at more recently was, how do we increase connection but reduce meeting time? And we gave some examples. So it's important that that person has time to share the context. Otherwise, they'll be in the same situation that I was in, where I get loads of advice that's not really helpful because they didn't know what I had done already and all those kind of things. So this does work well with a lot of people. So I guess you could have people on their own, but you could also have them in groups. And what people do then for the next 5 minutes in those groups is they decide on clarifying questions. So what else do they want to know from the person who's giving the problem to the group? What do they need to clarify? What else do they need to understand? And this is really important because often we give advice without knowing what the context of the problem really is. But here's the thing. Masterminds can so easily take lots and lots of time and you don't feel like you've got anywhere. Well, each group has to come up with their clarifying questions, but then they have to rank them because they're only allowed to ask one. And as you go around the room, you might find that a question that you've asked has been taken. But it really makes you think carefully about the kinds of questions you're asking. So if you think back to the episode where I said the quality of your questions is really important, well, this means that actually you're going to think really carefully, is this the question that is going to get me the most information? Is this the right question? Or do I need to ask a different question or phrase it differently? So that's the first 10 minutes covered. The next 10 minutes is where each group can ask those questions. So depending on the host, you will need a host who is separate from the person who's got the problem. You might let people ask one question, each group, or you might let them ask 2 questions. And this is when they can get their answers to that as well. So everyone gets more information about the problem by each group asking 1 or 2 clarifying questions, bearing in mind that they're not going to repeat what somebody else has said. Then the next section is 15 minutes, and each group discusses what guidance they are going to give the person with the problem. And the same thing applies. They can get everything out onto a piece of paper, but they have to rank those points, those pieces of advice that they would give to the person in order, because they're only going to be allowed to deliver 2 points unless they're allowed to give more in this time. And then the last 15 minutes is each group delivering that guidance and everybody's listening. So you do the same thing. You've got to think what's going to have the most impact? What's the most realistic? What's the lowest hanging fruit here? You have to really think about that as somebody who's giving the guidance. Instead of just shooting off anything, you're really encouraged to give the best guidance and advice possible. And then we always say, it's not a list of instructions for the person who's brought the problem, because in a work setting, you could perhaps feel that everyone's just giving you this list of things to do. It's guidance. You can look at that, and there might be still some things that don't make sense because you didn't get a chance to properly clarify everything. But there are some things that you think, right, I'm gonna do that. And often we'll do a mastermind session, and some of those things might not get implemented until 6 months down the line because you can't do everything all at once. But what it really helps with as well is everyone feeling like they've got a hand in the different departments, that the voices are being heard, that they're getting a chance to be involved. And we found this to be really useful. So perhaps this could be a useful activity that you do in your company. Maybe you do it at an away day, or maybe you do it with some business friends and you use it as a way to really get to the bottom of some of the problems that you've got in business so that you can then take some really valuable action. And I think the last point to note is it's really important that there's a note taker, somebody who's going to capture everything that is said to the person with the problem so they can spend their time really listening to what people are saying and responding. And at the end of it, they can be given a PDF document which lists everything that they need to think about. If you do decide to try this mastermind framework, then please let me know. I'd love to hear about the results and how it's been helpful for you. Thank you for listening to the Education Business Podcast. This podcast is sponsored by Classroom Secrets. To find more resources to grow your business, visit classroomsecrets.co.uk.